On today's video, we're going to look at a concept in action figures that doesn't have a good terminology, so we're just going to call it action figure DLC.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and on today's video, we're going to be discussing a concept that has sort of spread throughout toy collecting and action figure making, starting mostly in Japan and working its way westward, and that is the idea of action figure DLC. So this is not really a term yet. We're hoping to coin the term. It would be really cool if it was. But basically, DLC, for those that don't play video games, is downloadable content. So for example, if you're playing a fighting game and they add a new character, you're going to pay like $5, add that character in. Or if you're Tekken, for some reason, $12, whatever it is, you have to pay an extra amount of money, and then you add something to your game. And sometimes DLC is content that was designed for the game that they then decided to sell later as opposed to including in the base package. Now that exact same concept does apply to action figures in all the examples I have in this video. And we're going to go through it in both the good positives and the bad lights, because we can really break this down by looking at different examples of how it's done. Fair warning up front, a lot of this is going to be SH Figuarts. They're kind of the pioneer of this idea, but as you can see by Goliath back there, they're not the only ones that do it. So we're going to get into this. It's not a comprehensive list in any means. I'm just kind of picking personal examples, things I'm, have experience with, frustrations with, and that sort of thing. And we're going to go through some examples. So we're going to do 3 good examples, 3 bad examples, so it's nicely balanced out. So if you enjoy this type of video, please hit the like button and subscribe and the notification bell if you haven't already. Really do appreciate it. Helps the video get out there, helps the channel grow, and helps us continue to do cool things like this on this channel. So on that note, let's take a look at a good example before talking about some bad examples. And then we're going to kind of try to keep it balanced as we talk about action figure DLC. Alright, so let's start with a good example of figure DLC. So Super 7 Ultimates does Thundercats, and one of the things that is crazy with these figures, they come with a ton of accessories. It's part of like their increased price and such. So when it comes to like Lion-O, for example, he came with pretty much everything you would expect him to come with. But then when they made Mirror Lion-O, they gave him a few extra accessories. So Mirror Lion-O is just a one-off kind of character. He's just in a single episode. So we got this, which was the claw shield with its grappling hook extended out of one of the fingertips. This is not something that happens frequently into the series, and it's not like super common. So it's just kind of a neat bonus, something to kind of maybe sell Mirror Lion-O on his accessory count, because again, he's just a one-off clone of Lion-O here. But I think this is kind of neat. This is kind of like, I think, sort of the essence of like, collector figures with extra accessories for other figures, because you can give this to Mirror Lion-O, but you could give it to regular Lion-O, because it's the same like mold and everything, so it goes right onto his wrist peg. It looks really cool, it works really great, but if you don't have it, if you just bought Lion-O, you're not really missing anything. And I think that's kind of like one of the better examples of like how you can have like, the collection is enhanced as you build more figures without taking away anything from the initial figure. And it's kind of a good example of how this sort of technique works. I think this is a really beneficial thing, is that you could have like, all right, here's the evil clone of Lion-O, but you get extra accessories, kind of making them partial accessory pack at the same time. But let's look at a bad example of figure DLC to kind of give us a good barometer of how this idea works. All right, let's talk about the Tokusatsu Figuarts, because they're probably one of the more egregious examples of figure DLC being a problem. We had kind of broken up this trend. So for context, a lot of Kamen Rider figures of the recent era were priced lower, but then didn't include any weapon accessories, and you'd have to get their weapons with other figures. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. And it seemed like we had broken that trend a little bit with Gotchard and Geats, because with both of these figures, they each came with a blaster, so that means they at least had one weapon in the box. Naturally, Geats did have a long-range version of his blaster, which was included with another figure, and also all of his armor form changes were other figures. Whereas with Gotchard, they gave him the Gotchard charge gun, but like the arrow and some of his other weapons were included with other figures. But in the base package, you could have a satisfying, like, okay, I got my Kamen Rider, I got their main weapon, and I think that's pretty cool. So getting into Kamen Rider Gav, there was kind of an anticipation that he probably would come with his main sword. But Gav came out, and he only came with hands, which means we backtracked, and yes, as you would imagine, Kamen Rider Valen, who's a P-Bandai exclusive, came with the sword. So you're not only having to buy a second figure, you're having to buy a premium web shop exclusive figure just to get the main weapon for Kamen Rider Gav. And that figure for Gav also has problems posing into the poses he does in the show, because he does really low crouch poses and the figure just can't pull that off. So it's kind of a bit of a frustrating thing. And so that's kind of the MO of Kamen Rider for a few years, and sort of I'm kind of sick of it, because it would be nice, I thought with Geats and Gotchard they were breaking the trend and they're at least going to come with a weapon. But Gav, once again, the sword got thrown in with another figure that was premium Bandai that costs a lot more money, and that just sucks because it limits the base package figure immensely. Now, on the other side of things, Ultraman is a little better in some places, but a little worse in others. All right, so in the better category, Ultraman Arc here, the base figure was just Ultraman Arc, and then things like his Luna armor were a separate armor pack. And so you wouldn't have to buy a whole second Ultraman Arc lunar armor figure, and you could just buy the armor, which was great, and I thought that was awesome. The lunar armor and the Solus armor came out at retail, but then the Galaxy armor was premium Bandai and cost as much as a standalone figure. So that sort of broke up the whole idea there. Now, as a benefit though, Ultraman Arc's Ice Sword was included in the base package with the figure, meaning he came with his main weapon, and Ultraman Blazar did the same thing. However, if you wanted Ultraman Arc's beam effect, you had to get the premium Bandai exclusive Guile Arc from the movie. So we kind of had this thing where they sort of gave us what we were looking for, which pretty much is like the base package, including everything it should, like with the sword, but it didn't have the beam effect. And then the armor packs were at retail, so they weren't too expensive. But then the third armor pack was premium Bandai, and then you have to buy a whole other figure just to get his beam effect. And I think that's kind of the problem, is we're piecemealing out the parts that should have just been included. And in fact, older Ultras, when they get solicited, they seem to come with all their parts. So why is it the newer ones kind of suffer from this not having a full package option without buying a ton of figures? But the absolute most egregious example is the New Generation Stars re-release series. So here we have Ultraman Victory. And this is the original release of Ultraman Victory, which came with his sword as well as his giant magma arm. Didn't come with his other kaiju arms, but at least it came with two of them. He did not come with a beam effect, but it was like, okay, well, at least we got, two of his weapons. Maybe they'll do like what they did for Ultraman X, where they do like a armor pack for X and it came with the beam effect. Maybe a weapon pack for Victory and he comes with the beam effect. Unfortunately, the beam effect for Victory did come out in the New Generation Stars reissue, which is the same figure, except now it has the beam effect, but doesn't have the weapons. So if you want 2 out of 5 Victory weapons in the beam effect, you're going to have to buy the same exact figure twice. And so it sucks on two fronts. One, if you have the original release, you're having to rebuy Victory just for his beam effect. And if you only get the new release, you have to rebuy the old one to get the weapons. There's not a solution here, and that is stupid. Honestly, it would have been better if there was a weapons pack for Victory that would have been re-released alongside the figure being re-released, because as it is, you're kind of stuck not even having a complete set of accessories, and you have to buy the same figure twice. That is lame, and it's not the only example. I think there's other Ultramans in the New Generation series that have unique beam effects, but don't include accessories their previous release included. That is not a good way to do action figures, and it just sucks, and it kind of spoils the whole experience when it comes with the Kamen Rider Ultraman Figuarts. Just like, Super Sentai only doing reds, you're kind of missing out on part of the experience with, even buying everything, you're still missing stuff. But it's a lot of double dipping, and it's a lot of like, man, why couldn't we just get everything in the base package with how expensive Figuarts are? Now, when it comes to Figuarts, they're going to be kind of a main focus of the video because they're the ones that do this the most out of any company. And so here's a good example of how they've done it well. With the Naruto Figuarts line, things are conditional. So not every Naruto figure has a figure DLC option. So for example, if you bought Orochimaru and you have Part 1 Sasuke, you get the curse mark face for Part 1 Sasuke, which is, when Orochimaru is kind of possessing him and taking him over. So it kind of makes sense that, in the sense that the Part 1 Sasuke figure comes with like everything you'd expect, and then the curse mark face is included with Orochimaru because it's showing like Orochimaru's possession of him and his overall takeover. And that's kind of cool. There's another example like the new Jiraiya Figuart comes with an alternate face for Naruto where they're smiling together. So it's like a scene-specific thing. That kind of thing really works for me because it kind of goes with the figures. If you have this figure, you get a part for this figure. And some of the other Naruto Figuarts do come with faces for iconic scenes and moments, and I think that works really well. Especially because I feel like they're not pulling accessories from an existing figure to put them with another figure just to sell that figure. And that's kind of where my next bad example comes in, because there's some other figures from another popular anime series that go in the complete opposite direction of conditional accessories that make sense to go with character pairings, and then just go straight into extortion. Let's talk about Dragon Ball. So when it comes to Dragon Ball Figuarts, not only do they get a significant more amount of premium Bandai exclusives than the other anime lines, but they also are sold on Premium Bandai US, where a lot of the other anime lines like Naruto and One Piece, theirs get sold at retail, despite being Premium Bandai in Japan. But adding to this, Dragon Ball absolutely is probably the biggest offender in SH Figuarts to doing figure DLC. So for example, if you got the Mini Goku from Dragon Ball Daima, that's a pretty well-rounded package, all things considered. He comes with a good amount of stuff. But if you say you wanted a twirling effect part for his power pole, that's going to be included with SH Figuarts Goma, who is a Premium Bandai exclusive. Now that's a nice bonus, and there's some extra faces included with some of the other Daima Figuarts, and that's pretty good. But not every Daima Figuart comes with a part for Goku, which is kind of nice. It actually sort of balances out. I think they've got a good sort of balance going there when it comes to here's some bonus accessories without you making feel like you're missing something essential. Unlike when they did Superhero Gohan. So this is probably the most egregious example I can think of when it comes to Figuarts and figure DLC. And that is Gohan here. So Gohan was sold at general retail for about 35 bucks, around, 3,500 yen. It was a really solid figure, good articulation, and pretty good accessory loadout. Now the thing is, in the Dragon Ball Superhero movie, Gohan appears in his ultimate form, like it does here, for a kind of short amount of time in the movie. There's a lot of other things going on with Gohan in the film, but he does go into ultimate at some point. However, there are some other looks of him that are more iconic, I think, to the superhero movie, and they gave you that option to get them throughout the entire superhero Figuarts lineup. So let's go over this. So the base Gohan figure itself is just the ultimate. You get hands, you get faces, but it's only Ultimate Gohan in its in form and style. And the lower price is nice in a lot of ways, but there is some complications if you want other looks of Gohan. So basically, if you wanted Gohan's other accessories that you would kind of expect, his Super Saiyan head, which looks really nice, and the fact you don't have to have a whole separate figure for it is nice, but if you want that Super Saiyan head, you have to get Gamma 1, who is a Premium Bandai exclusive. So that's another $70, $80 figure. Then if you want his standard look, his extra head with the glasses and his cape, it came with Gamma 2, another $70, $80 figure. Then adding to that, if you want the standard head with no glasses, you have to get Pan, who was severely overpriced at $50. And then if you want his beam effect for him charging up the Kamehameha, it comes with Orange Piccolo. Why does Orange Piccolo come with accessories for Gohan? I don't know. Why would you think it wouldn't come with accessories for Piccolo? And then going with this, there's one other faceplate. There is a Red Eyes faceplate for Gohan, which came with Gohan Beast. And this is the only one I won't complain about, because this is a face for him powering up to Gohan Beast, so it makes sense to come with Gohan Beast. If he was just, if that was sold with the base figure, it wouldn't make sense. But in terms of the cape, the Super Saiyan head, the standard head, on the beam effect, all of those are accessories we see equivalent to other Dragon Ball Figuarts and other Figuarts in general just coming in the base package. That could have been one completely well-rounded Gohan figure. But instead, Bandai knew that if you wanted those other accessories, they could sell you on 4 other figures. And so in total, you're spending a lot more money than just the nice little $35 Gohan package. You could also be like me and just say, screw it, I just want the ultimate form. Overall, there's not really a good upside to spreading Gohan's accessories throughout the entire line for the movie. And I really don't have any positive things to say. I like the Gohan figure, but it would have been nice if he included all those options in his box. Because for a lot of people, one figure would have been enough, and instead of having to buy all these other figures just to get what he should have just come with in the beginning. And so it kind of feels like Bandai was manipulating the market there, and that's not fun for anyone. So Bandai's not always terrible with this in Figuarts. Here's a good figure DLC example. Monkey D. Luffy. So for SH Figuarts, for One Piece, they've been doing a pretty good job, I think, with balancing this idea. So Luffy here is sold as a $35 figure, a, kind of entry price Figuart. But included in the box, you got multiple options for his hat, multiple hair options, multiple hands, and an extra piece of meat for him to chow on, making him a fully featured figure. You get all the basic things you want out of Luffy. No stretchy limbs, but they sell the Gum Gum option parts set that includes all those stretchy effects for those that want it. You don't have to, say for example, get one stretchy arm with Nami and then a stretchy leg with Law. You just get a accessory pack, and then boom, you've got pretty much everything you need for this look of Luffy. And then adding to that, the thing I do like is that they do figure DLC for the One Piece Figuarts. Each One Piece Figuart comes with an extra face for Luffy. And all these Luffy faces work with not only the Romance Dawn Luffy, but the Raiden Onigashima Luffy, the Egghead Island Luffy. Technically, the Gear 5 Luffy, that one doesn't work quite the same. But any base regular form Luffy can use any of these faces, and that's such a great feature, because that means no matter which Luffy you have, you pick up another One Piece Figuart, you're going to get a bonus Luffy face, and it gives you some more options in posing and expressions. And I think that's super cool. And some of these go from very, moment-specific things to match the figure it came with, to just like variations of him yelling or smiling or whatnot. And that's what I think works really well. It's adding to the experience because, especially with One Piece, a lot of people are going to have a Luffy. So if you're getting another character from One Piece, you probably have something to do with that face, but it's not something crazy. Because one of the downsides for the Gohan that I kind of forgot to mention, what if you just wanted Gamma 1 and 2 and not Gohan, and then now you have like 2 extra Gohan heads and a cape you don't know what to do with? I've run into that with some other figures in this kind of category where it's like, okay, well, I didn't buy that thing, so I can't really use that accessory. For example, I have Yamcha, but I don't have Dr. Gero, so I have Dr. Gero's arm stabbing through Yamcha, and it just sits in the box because I don't know what the heck to do with it at this point. So I like the faces thing. It's just an extra bonus. It doesn't feel like it's adding into the budget of the other characters, and it doesn't feel like it's taking anything away from the Luffy itself. And so I think in general, if you're talking about figure DLC, that's the best example I have so far. And in fact, this style is bled over into other lines like Kaiju number 8. All the other Kaiju number 8 characters come with faces for Kaiju number 8, and they're starting to include some other accessories. The upcoming Kafka Hibino human form is going to include like effect parts for the Kaiju form. And so that's kind of a cool thing to do. I think that works because those are 2 forms of the same character, but in general, again, include a new extra faceplate for the main character. I think that works out. It's nothing that if you buy just the one figure, you're going to be stuck with a huge accessory, but it does add to the overall collection. I think that's a good and probably the best way to do figure DLC. Just a little bonus to put with another figure where it doesn't feel like they're like, oh, you want this iconic accessory? We'll buy this whole other figure, the way they do it with Dragon Ball. Are you all ready to see the absolute worst thing that I've ever seen happen with the concept of figure DLC? This is the line affected worst of all time when it comes to figure DLC. And it is bad, and it is real bad, and it's time to show you how bad this idea can get. NECA's Gargoyles. Oh my god, where do I even begin? Okay, so NECA's Gargoyles line was pretty cool when it debuted because it was like, oh hey, we're getting Gargoyles figures. Which, we hadn't gotten really Gargoyles figures since the cartoon aired. I love Gargoyles. I think it's great. Naturally, I bought every figure they made. The unfortunate part is that they decided to do something absolutely stupid. So you might notice that Goliath, Demona, and Brooklyn, they all have wing capes, when the wings are folded up as we see in the show, whereas Broadway and Hudson and Thalog and Angela don't have wings on at all. Well, that's the fun part here, because here are Angela's wings. So for some reason, NECA felt compelled that the wings that were going to be included in the box of the Gargoyles were going to be these gigantic splayed out wings. For example, let's pull Angela forward here. You can see why this would be maybe an issue. Yeah, if you have any shelf space whatsoever, it's going to get filled up by one gargoyle and their wings, and these can pivot down, which kind of helps, but they still stick out a whole lot. Now, for some reason, they decided this would be the default option for all the Gargoyles' wings. This is an issue, if you can tell, because how are you supposed to display something with this big of a wingspan? Personally speaking, these things should have been articulated, and if they weren't going to be articulated, they should have been the half fold, like we see in the show where their wings are come about here, and then they fold down, so they're still kind of out, but they're not like, you know, splayed out completely into flying poses. You can never get them in because the figures are too dang heavy. Here's the issue. So to sell the line, they decided Goliath's wing cape would come with Bronx, since he was smaller, so they could charge the same amount for him as they do the other figures by including his wing cape. Demona's came with Xanatos. Brooklyn's came with Eliza Maza. That was it. Broadway's did come out, but only with the trench coat version of Broadway, which would mean you have to buy a second Broadway. So you see the issue here. Thalog's, Hudson's, Angela's never got made. Lexington was a smaller figure that they charged the same price for. He just came with extra accessories. He didn't come with somebody's closed wings. Angela would have been the good one to do because, you know, Hudson doesn't usually do as many wing capes, but we're still running into an issue. And this is the issue, is I have all of these wings I don't know what to do with. What am I supposed to do with wings this big for every single figure? Not to mention the fact these figures are gigantic. They're like 7-inch scale figures, which means Goliath here is like 8 inches tall. There is not room to display these. What I would have liked is if the default wings were those half wings, and then you could do the closed capes as an option. The problem here is that the line got canceled, there are no more releases, and therefore half the Gargoyles do not have closed wing options. So what was the point of any of this? Why not just include the closed wings as part of the base figures if you weren't confident you were going to get a line out that had enough smaller characters? Because the thing is, we got like the Steel Clan back here. The Steel Clan wings are still gigantic, but at least they're articulated in one spot so they can kind of pull out and collapse a little bit. But their wings are huge as well due to the size scaling of this line. And so I don't know what to do with these. I dug them out of a box for the first time since the line got canceled, or pretty much since Lexington came out, because I can't display all these figures with their wings, and they look wrong not having their wings attached because, you know, they're Gargoyles. This is the worst example of figure DLC, because what they did is they decided to try to sell the smaller figures at the same price as the bigger figures by including an accessory that was essential to a bigger figure. In theory, that's good. But when the line gets canceled before you can finish that plan because of how slow the figure came out and how there wasn't that many smaller characters in Gargoyles to begin with, you run into an issue. And that issue is this. On top of the fact they announced like 5 other figures they never released, that's less of an issue because none of those were slated to come with the extra wings for the smaller, the smaller wings for their characters. This is a complete misfire of packing accessories for figures with other figures. This is absolutely the worst example. Even over the Dragon Ball ones, at the very least, they made all the accessories for Gohan if it was a stupid way to do it. Here, I'm stuck with a collection that really can't properly be displayed because they decided that the default option was a 12-inch wingspan on every single figure. So with that all said, the line's dead, and I hope somebody does Gargoyles again, and if they do, please make half-bent wings at bare minimum. So like I said in the top, it's not a comprehensive list of this concept and idea, but it is something that is continuing to happen more and more as toy companies find new ways for collectors to buy more figures than just like the main stars. And I don't think the idea is horrible. I think the way that One Piece has done it is pretty solid. I think the way that Rider and Ultraman has done it, pretty bad. I think Superhero Gohan is one of the worst examples, but nothing beats NECA Gargoyles. I don't mean to throw NECA Gargoyles under the bus like that, but man, I'm kind of pissed that line ended and I still don't have all the wing capes because they didn't make them all. Like, geez, you couldn't have made like a NECA store exclusive wing cape pack? Like, come on. Anyways, the point being is that there's a lot of examples of this, and I didn't cover them all in this video, so if you have some suggestions of ones we didn't cover, hit the comment section down below and let me know, and I'll probably do a follow-up on this if this idea is popular enough and you guys have enough examples for me to kind of follow up and look into, because these are just kind of the ones on the top of my mind when this idea came across. So on that note, though, hit the like button, subscribe, and notification bell if you haven't already. Helps this video get out there, helps the channel grow, helps us continue to do cool things. Join our community in the Discord server in the link below. We have lots of great time down there. Also consider joining as a channel member if you want to support the channel directly, and you can do that for early access to videos, member-exclusive live streams, and more. Let's give some special shoutouts to channel members while you consider it. Special shout out to all of our channel members, including Captain Tier, Spin-54, Toma K, MasterBin95, Forever1000, Super Shaddix Boom, Mr. Smelly Potato, Silverbricks, Travis's Media Madness, Gokai Gamer, Josh Frisch, Muhammad Faiz Daniel, Brinton Yadden, Stephen Hino Josa, Jamie's World, Cameron Meter, and Taylor Black. Thank you all for your support, both channel members and viewers alike. If you so wish, I am on social media at Blue Sky. You can also find my wonderful graphic designer and the person who came up with the idea for this video at DarkClass643 on social media and Discord. And you can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for toy news, interviews, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, let's hope nothing as bad as the NECA Gargoyles wings ever happens again to us.